Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Mark Cole stood on the porch of his grandfather's house, the old Victorian clinging to the crest of what the locals called Blackwood Ridge. The late autumn wind, sharp and clean, carried the scent of pine needles and damp earth, the smell of every summer he'd spent here since he was 5. His hand, calloused from work, traced the grain of the wooden railing Ray Cole had carved himself. Those same hands had shown Mark how to rebuild an engine, field dress a deer, and read the cold numbers on a financial statement. "What would you make of all this, old man?" Mark muttered, the words dissolving in the breeze. 3 weeks. That's how long Ray had been in the ground. The will reading had landed like a quiet bomb, stunning everyone but Mark. His cousins got envelopes thick with cash. Mark got the house, the workshop, and 40 acres of timbered land surrounding it. To the only one who understands what it means, the will had read, a final, knowing glance from beyond the grave. For generations of Coles had held this place. Mark's great-grandfather, stubborn as the granite bedrock, worked 3 jobs through the Depression to keep the bank away. Ray himself survived the 2010s crash living on canned beans and gut instinct, refusing debt like it was poison. This house wasn't just timber and nails. It was a monument to sheer, bloody-minded endurance. His family's stubborn refusal to break. His phone vibrated against his thigh. A text from Sarah, his wife. "Dinner at my parents'. 7 sharp. Don't be late." He sighed, the sound thin in the vast quiet. Vance family dinners. Arthur Vance, his father-in-law, held court like a king on a dwindling throne, whiskey glass permanently attached to his hand. Eleanor, his mother-in-law, navigated the evening with the brittle precision of a conductor leading a discordant orchestra, fueled by perfectly chilled martinis. Sarah's sister, Chloe, usually filled the silences with breathless updates on her photography career, forever perched on the edge of discovery. The gap between their world and his own felt wider than ever up here. Mark grew up smelling sawdust and solder. His dad was an electrician, his mom a nurse. They taught him the value of a straight seam, an honest day's work, looking a man in the eye. A car wreck stole them when he was 19, leaving only Ray. Now, at 35, Mark ran his own construction company, specializing in restoring old buildings, ghosts of wood and plaster. A skill Ray had patiently nurtured. He'd met Sarah when the Vances hired him to gut and remodel their cavernous kitchen. Against all odds, something sparked. 7 years married, and now he sometimes caught himself wondering if the spark had died, or if they'd just been seeing smoke all along. He pushed the phone back into his pocket and went inside, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and old paper. Passing the study, he noticed Ray's heavy, old safe wasn't quite shut. Strange. He distinctly remembered locking it after pulling the deeds last week. He nudged the thick steel door open. Empty, except for a small, worn leather journal tucked in the back corner, almost hidden. He hadn't seen it before. He picked it up. The leather was cracked, softened by decades of handling. Inside, the first page held Ray's familiar, angular script. "Mark, if you're reading this, I'm gone. This holds things I never said out loud. Some family truths are best left buried deep. Others fester. They need air before they poison the next generation. Trust your gut on when or if you open these pages all the way. You always had good judgment. Ray." Mark's thumb brushed over the brittle pages. Names jumped out, names he knew. Arthur Vance, Eleanor, other prominent Portland families. A knot tightened in his stomach. Curious, but pressed for time, he slid the journal into the inner pocket of his jacket and headed out to his truck. He didn't know it then, pulling away from the quiet ridge, that the ordinary rhythm of his life had just fractured. He didn't know that the ground beneath his feet was about to give way. The foundations were cracking. The Vance estate wasn't just a house. It was a statement. 3 acres of manicured perfection in Portland's West Hills. A monument to Arthur Vance's knack for commercial real estate, or at least, the appearance of it. Mark parked his dusty Ford F-150 between a gleaming black Mercedes and a hulking SUV, feeling like a muddy boot on a silk carpet. He'd learned the steps to their dance, but the music always felt wrong. There he is, the working man. Arthur's voice, artificially hearty, boomed from the doorway. Arthur Vance III, 60 but fighting it, stood impeccably tailored, silver hair sculpted, whiskey glinting in his hand. He clapped Mark on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more like staking a claim than a welcome. "Sorry, running late," Mark said. "Had to check on things up at the house." Eleanor Vance materialized, gliding into the hall, martini held aloft like a scepter. "Still fussing over that old place, Mark? Sarah tells me it needs a fortune poured into it." Her smile was thin, painted on. "It's solid," Mark replied, keeping his voice even. "The bones are good. Anything Sarah wants is cosmetic." Eleanor's smile didn't waver, but her eyes tightened. "Well, you're the expert on construction." Sarah appeared beside him then, a vision in a dress that probably cost more than his foreman made in 2 weeks. She brushed his cheek with her lips, her perfume expensive and faint. "Could have worn the blue shirt I got you," she murmured, a familiar prickle of disapproval in her tone. Before he could answer, Chloe burst in, trailing her fiance, Rick Shaw. Rick was a financial advisor with aggressively slicked-back hair and a smile that never quite reached his cold eyes. Mark had disliked him on sight 6 months ago. "Everyone. Big news," Chloe announced, practically vibrating. "Rick and I set the date. June 15th. Champagne flutes appeared as if summoned. Amid the flurry of congratulations, Mark saw it, the way Rick's hand lingered a fraction too long on Sarah's waist as he pulled her into a hug, the faint flush creeping up her neck. A flicker of unease, sharp and unwelcome, went through him. "We found the most divine venue," Chloe bubbled. "The Rosewood. But the deposit's due next week." "Anything for my princess," Arthur beamed, though a shadow crossed his face. "Have to say, though, these event prices are criminal." Dinner was the usual performance. Mark watched, a detached observer. He saw how Sarah angled her chair slightly towards Rick, the way their eyes met, just for a second, over the rim of their wine glasses. The weight of Ray's journal felt heavy in his pocket. What secrets did it hold about these people, this polished family? When dessert arrived, some elaborate mousse thing, Chloe cleared her throat. "So, there's just one tiny issue with the wedding budget." "How tiny?" Arthur asked, his jovial mask slipping. "About double what we planned," Rick said smoothly, meeting Arthur's gaze. "But Chloe deserves the best. Wouldn't you agree?" A sudden tension thickened the air. "Markets have been unpredictable," Arthur said slowly. "Cash flow isn't what I'd like it to be right now." An uncomfortable silence stretched. Mark felt eyes turning towards him, expectant. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice syrupy sweet. "Mark, darling, I understand Ray's property must be worth quite a bit. All that land, so close to the city." He stiffened. "It's not for sale." "No one's suggesting selling, son," Arthur said quickly, recovering. "But perhaps a small home equity loan? Just temporary, of course. To help family." Mark looked at Sarah, waiting for her to intervene, to support him. She stared intently at her dessert plate, suddenly fascinated by the swirl of chocolate. "We should discuss this at home," Mark said, his voice flat, final. Later, driving back in charged silence, the distance between them felt like a physical chasm. When they pulled into their driveway, Sarah finally broke. "You embarrassed me tonight, Mark." Her voice was tight with anger. "Refusing to even consider helping my family. Acting like you're not part of us. By not immediately agreeing to leverage my grandfather's legacy for your sister's party? It's just a house. A drafty old house that needs God knows what. It's my heritage, Sarah." His voice was quiet, but hard. "Would you sell your grandmother's pearls to pay for catering? That's different," she snapped. "How?" "Because," she faltered, searching. "That jewelry, it's meant to be passed down. So is the house." Her expression hardened into something ugly. "To who, Mark? We don't have kids. Let's be honest, we're probably not going to have kids." Not if you keep using this damn house as another excuse to put it off. The words hit low, reopening an old wound. Their arguments about starting a family had become more frequent, more bitter. He wanted children. Sarah always had a reason to wait. Her interior design career was just taking off. The timing wasn't right. They needed more financial security, despite living comfortably. "This conversation is done," Mark said, turning away, heading towards the spare room he'd started using as a study. "Where are you going?" "To read." He closed the door, the click echoing in the sudden quiet. He pulled Ray's journal from his jacket. He had a sick feeling the answers to the mess unfolding around him were buried somewhere in its aging pages, tangled in the secrets of the past. The next morning, Mark called his foreman, Mike Ramos, told him he wouldn't be in a rare occurrence. After Sarah left for her design studio, the click of her heels fading down the walk, he settled in the study with a cup of black coffee and Ray's journal. He started reading, not skimming, letting the old man's words sink in. The entries spanned 30 years, business deals, observations, frustrations. Halfway through, dated April 18, 1995, he found it. The words hit him like a fist in the gut. "Art Vance came by today. Wants investment for a new development off River Road. Something's wrong. Numbers feel thin." Questioned him, he got hot fast. Defensive. Said I was paranoid. Maybe. Seen too many good folks lose shirts trusting a slick smile. Mark flipped forward, heart pounding. June 3, 1995. Knew it. Art's using new money to plug holes in his old deals. Classic shell game. Confronted him. He tried to buy me off, offered a special partner rate to keep quiet. Told him where to stick it. Then he threatened me. Ruin my name, he said. Said nobody'd believe an old dirt mover over Arthur Vance III. He's probably right. He read on, a cold dread spreading through him. Ray had gathered evidence, copies of misleading prospectuses, notes from hushed phone calls, but never used it. December 12, 1995. Art paid everyone back. Found a legit backer or claims he did. Keeping the file anyway. Leopards don't change spots. Just find better camouflage. The final entries were worse. Closer. May 15, 2018. Mark's marrying Sarah Vance next month. Haven't told him about Art. Should I? Change anything? Love makes fools of us all. Lord knows I've been one. January 3, 2023. Something's off with Mark's marriage. He doesn't say much, but I see it. Eyes look haunted. The Vances circling. Like vultures. They want the Ridge property. Always have. Art offered to buy me out direct last week. Said no. Then he mentioned Mark and Sarah. Their troubles way it felt like a threat. Recording this call. Adding it to the rest. The journal mentioned a hidden spot in the safe. A small, steel box concealed beneath a false bottom. Inside, Mark found a dusty USB drive, brittle photographs, and documents confirming every damning word in the journal. His mind reeled. Ray knew. He knew what Arthur was, and he let Mark walk right into the middle of it. Why? As he tried to process the betrayal, Ray's silence, Arthur's history, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. About Sarah. Meridian Coffee, 2 p.m. Come alone. Maria. Maria Diaz. Sarah's assistant." Mark remembered her from a company party. Quiet, watchful. Seemed out of place among the Vances glossy crowd. He thought she seemed smart, straightforward. Qualities the Vances usually dismissed as unrefined. At Meridian Coffee, Maria was already there, nervously shredding a paper napkin. "I'm probably way over the line here," she began, not meeting his eyes. "But you need to know, Sarah, she's having an affair. With Rick Shaw." He'd suspected. Seen the glances at dinner. But hearing it spoken aloud felt like being shoved under ice water. "I have proof," Maria continued, sliding her phone across the small table. Text messages, raw, explicit. Hotel receipts. Dates stretching back at least 4 months. His stomach churned. "Why show me this?" His voice was hoarse. Maria pulled her phone back. "Because they're planning something else. I overheard them talking." About your grandfather's property. Sarah said once they got control of it, they could develop it. Luxury condos. She hesitated. Rick said something about after you were out of the picture. It didn't sound like they meant divorce. Why risk your job? Mark asked, searching her face. Maria's expression hardened, a flicker of old anger in her eyes. My dad lost everything years ago, invested with guys like Vance. Guys who think money and connections mean they can just walk over people. I owe them nothing. After Maria left, Mark sat there for a long time, the coffee cold in his cup, the city noise a dull roar outside the window. The betrayal wasn't just Sarah's anymore. It was Arthur's calculated manipulation, Rick's predatory opportunism, even Ray's protective, damaging silence. He started making a plan, not for reconciliation, for demolition. When he finally got back to the house, they shared her house. Really, he thought bitterly. Sarah was waiting, pacing the living room. Where have you been? She demanded. Mom called 3 times about the wedding funding. Mark looked at his wife, the woman he'd loved, or thought he loved, for 7 years. He saw her clearly now, perhaps for the first time. The polished surface, the brittleness underneath, the casual entitlement. Let's talk tomorrow, he said, his voice calm, measured. At your parents' place. I think I've figured out a solution. Something that works for everyone. Her face lit up, tension melting away, replaced by relieved brightness. Oh, Mark, really? That's wonderful. I knew you'd understand how important this is. She wrapped her arms around him, her body familiar yet alien against his. He felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve crystallizing inside him. Yes, he said, meeting her hopeful gaze. I understand perfectly now. The next day felt like moving through fog, driven by a purpose that had settled deep and cold in his gut. Mark met with his attorney, Janet Bell, first thing. Janet was sharp, no nonsense, had handled Ray's affairs for years before taking Mark on. You look like hell, Mark, she observed bluntly as he slid a thick folder across her polished desk. Need divorce papers drawn up. Quietly, immediately, he pushed the folder forward. And I need you to look into Arthur Vance's mortgage history. Everything. Janet's eyebrows shot up as she scanned the contents. Printouts of texts, financial documents Maria had discreetly copied, property deeds, Ray's journal notes. There's enough here to crucify her in the settlement, she murmured. Why the rush? And what's Vance's mortgage got to do with it? Because I'm about to burn some bridges, Mark said grimly. Need to know exactly how they're built first. He laid out Ray's history with Arthur, the affair, the condo scheme, the veiled threat Maria overheard. Janet listened intently, her expression growing serious. This is playing with fire, Mark. The Vances have deep roots in this city. So did my grandfather, Mark countered. He just chose not to pull them. Janet nodded slowly, tapping a pen against the folder. What you're planning, it skates close to the edge legally. Very close, but maybe not over. She met his eyes. I'll have the papers ready by tomorrow morning, and I'll start digging on Vance. Next stop, Riverstone Bank. George Mills, the branch manager, had played poker with Ray for 30 years. He greeted Mark with a warm, sad smile. After Mark laid out a carefully edited version of the situation, focusing on the pressure to leverage the Ridge property and his suspicions about Arthur's stability, George's expression hardened. Ray would be proud, Mark, George said quietly, leaning back in his chair. Proud you're standing up. Art Vance, he's been shuffling money around, playing games, for too damn long. Let me see what I can find in our old files. Armed with nascent information and Janet digging deeper, Mark made one more crucial call. Sam Green, a developer known for careful restorations and fighting City Hall over zoning stupidities. Years ago, Mark's crew had saved a historical project for Sam when everyone else said tear it down. It's a hell of an investment, Mark, Sam said cautiously after hearing Mark's proposal. A complex plan involving the Ridge property, but not in the way the Vances imagined. You sure about this? Never been surer. By evening, the groundwork was laid. Back at the house with Sarah, Mark played the part, talking vaguely about productive meetings, making progress on a family solution. He felt like a stranger in his own life, observing himself move and speak. That night, long after Sarah slept, Mark slipped into her home office. He knew the password to her laptop. He'd seen her type it countless times. The emails between her and Rick confirmed everything Maria had said. And worse, they weren't just lovers. They were partners in a cold-blooded scheme. Rick, once he uses the house as collateral, the rest is easy. Dad's guy at zoning already said the development plans fly. Sarah, are you sure we need Mom and Dad involved? Maybe we convince Mark directly? Rick, Chloe's wedding is perfect cover. Besides, you said yourself he's too attached to sell outright. This way, we get what we want. He thinks it was his idea. Win-win. Mark closed the laptop, placing it precisely back where it was. He walked numbly to the guest room. The man who lay down in the dark wasn't the same one who'd stood on Ray's porch grieving just days before. That man might have looked for explanations, for ways to salvage something. This man knew some structures were rotten to the core. They didn't need fixing. They needed raising. Morning light felt harsh, clinical. Mark drove to his current job site, restoring a neglected 1920s brick building downtown. His foreman, Mike Ramos, took one look at his face and frowned. Everything all right, boss? Look like you're planning to take down a wall without a permit. Mark managed a tight smile. Something like that. He handed Mike a thick manila envelope. Hold on to this for me. If anything happens, give it straight to Janet Bell. Nobody else. Mike's easygoing expression vanished. He weighed the envelope in his hand, his gaze searching Mark's. Something I should know? Insurance, Mark said curtly. And I need you to run things for a few days. Can you handle it? Always have, boss. Always will. Mike tucked the envelope securely inside his jacket. After finalizing details with Janet, who confirmed George Mills at the bank had found exactly what they needed regarding Arthur's precarious finances, Mark went home. Showered, dressed carefully, chose the same quiet, dark suit he'd worn to Ray's funeral. As he knotted his tie, Sarah came into the bedroom, already dressed for the evening. You look serious, she observed, a slight unease in her voice. Important conversations deserve proper attire, he replied evenly. Her eyes lit up with calculated relief. So, you're really going to help with Chloe's wedding? Dad will be so pleased. Let's just say, Mark said, meeting her eyes in the mirror, I found a solution that addresses everyone's true priorities. At the Vance estate, the air hummed with false bonhomie. Mark accepted Arthur's offer of expensive scotch he didn't want, discussed garden pests with Eleanor, playing the part of the accommodating son-in-law ready to capitulate. When Rick and Chloe arrived, he registered the furtive glance between Rick and Sarah, the slight possessive touch Rick gave her arm, but kept his face impassive. During appetizers, Arthur steered the conversation. So, Mark, Sarah mentioned you've had some thoughts about helping the kids out. I have, Mark replied, setting his untouched scotch down. But before we get to that, a toast. He picked up his water glass. To family, and the truths that bind us. He paused, letting his gaze drift over each of them, Arthur's forced smile, Eleanor's practiced poise, Rick's smugness, Sarah's hopeful anxiety, Chloe's oblivious excitement. To knowing exactly who we are, and what we truly value. He drank the water. The Vances and Rick raised their glasses, murmuring agreement. Arthur leaned forward, eager. So, about the house. My grandfather's house, Mark began, his voice quiet but carrying in the suddenly attentive room. It represents things, principles, heritage, things I haven't valued properly, maybe. Eleanor nodded sympathetically. We understand sentiment, dear, but sometimes, practical matters must take precedence. Exactly right, Eleanor. Practicality. Mark offered a thin smile, which is why I've spent the last couple of days analyzing the situation very, very carefully. He saw Rick shift impatiently. The bottom line, Mark? Arthur pressed. Will you take out a loan against the property? Help your family? Mark paused, letting the silence stretch. He looked from Arthur to Sarah, then slowly around the opulent room. The Ridge property, the land alone represents significant equity. Let's call it 2.3 million, conservatively. He saw Rick's eyes widen slightly. Chloe's wedding, even at the inflated prices Rick seems to have arranged with his vendor friends. Chloe gasped, color flooding her cheeks. Rick's jaw tightened. Shouldn't cost more than 300,000, tops. He continued calmly. Using the entire property as collateral for that amount seems excessive, unwise. However, he let the word hang there. Arthur's expression brightened with relief. So you'll do it? Let me finish, Mark insisted. I've arranged a meeting at Riverstone Bank tomorrow morning to discuss a different kind of financial structure, one that honors Ray's legacy and ensures Chloe gets her special day. The rest of dinner passed in a wave of renewed, effusive warmth from the Vances. Only Mark seemed to notice how Sarah and Rick studiously avoided catching each other's eye. Driving home, Sarah was jubilant. I knew you'd come around. Daddy was so impressed. Said you're finally showing real business sense. High praise, Mark replied dryly. I'll be leaving early for the bank meeting, he added as they pulled up to the house. Might be late tomorrow night, tying things up. Take all the time you need, Sarah said, squeezing his arm, her relief palpable. You're doing the right thing, Mark. Yes, he thought, stepping out of the car into the cool night air. Finally, thanks for listening. This story isn't over yet, and things are about to get even more intense. Stay tuned for the next part to see what happens next.